Okay, we're going to be starting this live stream right now. And as you come in, let me know how it sounds and looks. Having a little weird glitch with my camera today, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at sidechaining a little bit. I've had a lot of questions recently about sidechaining, and I'm not sure everyone fully understands what the big deal with sidechaining is and why you might want to use it. And so that's what we're going to talk about, just as looking at exactly what a sidechain is, some of the quirks about sidechaining in Logic, and then maybe talk about some advanced things if we have time. We're going to try to keep this stream to about 30 minutes today because I have another thing to do in 30 minutes. So, first and foremost, sidechaining is just a simple way of routing your audio. And we see sidechaining all over the place in Logic. It is everywhere. Let's open up like this retro synth here for a second. And we'll look at some of the other effects and things as we're doing this. But a lot of times on our different plugins, we have the ability to see the sidechaining in various places. Let's actually, before we do that one, let's open up one of our compressors right here. So you'll see sidechain inside the compressor interface itself. And you'll see at the top right corner of this that we have a sidechain menu. And so this menu allows us to figure out where the sidechain is coming from. And so literally the sidechain is just a routing function, and that's all you need to know at the very beginning of this. It's going to take audio from one place and move it to someplace else. In the case of a compressor, what we have is, well, let me play just a little bit of this instrument for a second so you can hear exactly and see what's happening. And so that's not the actual right compressor for that channel. Let's put one on here. So it's going to always have, the compressor needs some signal to analyze in order to do its job. And so typically it's the actual instrument or the audio that's going on the channel that this is loaded with. So you'll see the side chain up here set to internal. That means it's going to be working with the original bass sound. Yeah, so now you can see the compressor is working with that bass sound. And that's how we want it a lot of the time. If we're doing a vocal, we want the vocal signal itself to trigger the compressor to work, and so it can adjust the level of itself. In some cases, we actually want to be able to trigger the compression above and below the threshold using a different track, like a bass like this. And this drum kit that we have here, not necessarily the best example yet. We're going to prepare it here. And I'd say not the best one yet because right now it's the Speakeasy kit, but it's just the stereo version of it, not the producer kit. So let's actually load up the producer kit of this Speakeasy Plus. Listen to it, make sure it sounds about the same. And I think I'm going to undo for 1 second. Yeah, I think we're okay. It looks like I may have changed some of the settings on the compressor there, and so it will, because I'm loading up a new channel strip, reset that, and we'll have to actually go through and maybe remix it. We need to remix it anyway once we go to the producer kit, because now I've got all of the individual pieces here. This is the compressor that's on the bass track. I'm going to come up to the sidechain and look at the instrument options, and we don't have all of them there, but we do have these buses that got created. And bus 3 is the overheads, kick in, kick out, snare top, snare bottom. So I'm actually going to come down here with the kick. And we can actually do this sometimes as an instrument directly. In this case, we'll just pick out a bus. Bus number 9. Here's one of the things I dislike about Logic quite a bit. And that is that Logic, whenever you assign a bus to a channel, it automatically goes in and creates an auxiliary track, which is kind of obnoxious. And so I don't want a bus to automatically create that. But since it did, let's go down and find it right here. So this is the one it just created. And, we can delete it. So that way the bus now is just going to nowhere. And that's what we want. We want the bus just going off of that original kick instrument. I'm going to come up here to the buses. I'm going to do bus number 9. And so now this compressor is controlling or changing the level of the bass, but it's being triggered by the kick sound. So let's look at the graph. So let's activate the drums as well. So that way, because I think the send must have been pre-fader. Okay, go back to the beginning. You're going to see now that the bass is being adjusted in level every time that the kick hits. So hopefully you can hear that. What's happening is the kick then gets the bass out of the way every time the kick hits. So now, instead of having 2 instruments that are in the low frequency realm, we have one of them is actually telling the other one to move out of the way every time it hits. So we end up with a little bit tighter, cleaner, low frequency. Here's, I don't know how loud this is going to be, but here's the overall mix right now. Okay, let's get rid of the vocals for now. This is still rough. But you can hear the instrumental part there, how the kick now is taking control over the bass. This works in a ton of different styles, and it's something that is an important concept because a lot of times we're panning to get things into their own place. Sometimes we're EQing to get things in their own place. But sidechaining with compression is another way to get things to kind of fit together in their own place without having things step on themselves. So this is a great example of that. Now, another example of sidechaining, because again, it's routing. Let's make a new instrument track here. And I'm going to use, in this case, Sculpture. Because I like how it does things with sidechaining. We have these 3 objects which control the instrument. Let's turn on, I think it's object number 3. It's not. Let's see. Object number 2. Let's see if it's object number 1. It's not any of those. So let's sidechain in from something just because I know what it is, we're going to do that one. And what we can do is set this up so that the sidechain comes in and we're able to use it as part of our instrument. External right here. So that external is the sidechain. So we can actually route something from the other parts of Logic into this modeled synthesizer type instrument, and it becomes one of the activating objects. And so that's another great way to be able to use sidechaining, is because we can take that, bring it in as this object number 2, and then it influences what's happening with the sound. So I did a video like a couple years ago about using Sculpture with the sidechain as a vocoder, and that's exactly the type of effect we can get with this a little bit. So that the input there helps activate this modeled string. So another example of that sidechaining is happening here. Okay, so routing is what that's all about. We can also look directly at our vocoder. That's another example of something where you need to be able to understand the sidechaining quite a bit. Because we do have the Vocoder 20 filter bank and track oscillator. So let's just pull one of those up. Yeah, it's not this one. It's one of the other ones. Let's just pull open the instrument. I think that's probably the easiest way to demonstrate this. The Vocoder synth. You can see the side chain at the top, so we can do our audio input. We can make this a live microphone here with the audio input 1 and 2. We could do this as an audio track. If we had something pre-recorded, we could do this as an instrument or anything we ship to one of the buses. And then we can actually control all of the signal and how the two sounds work together with the rest of this. So this is actually a synthesizer which accepts an input, and with the input you can actually then meld the two in a normal vocoder type situation. Okay, if you want to know which things do vocoding, or not vocoding, sidechaining, you just have to look in the top right hand corner, and that's how you can tell if something can be actually sidechained together. So drum synth, nope. Let's see what else we have here. Nothing with that, and some of these wouldn't make sense to have anything. Alchemy definitely makes sense to be able to do some sidechaining, and we could get into that at a different time. But this is a very complex instrument and can do a ton of things. I'm curious if Ultrabeat can. I don't think I've ever really looked at that. I would imagine it could, yeah. So there's some option for sidechaining with Ultrabeat. And then we look at some of our effects. Let's see, EQ, no sidechaining. We could look at one of our, I don't think there's that many that really are going to. Sub bass, yeah, I didn't think so. There's not that many. It's really the dynamics that you can do this with. Trying to think if there's anything else where I would use that. Let's check out the multi-effects. I feel like, no, not with that steps, but maybe the other one. Let's see, the fat effects. Yeah, so the fat effects does have the ability to sidechains, but you can just look through and tell which ones are available with this just by looking at it like that. So that makes it really handy in terms of knowing if it's possible or not, right there from the interface of your various instruments or effects. I don't believe the reverbs do anything. Yeah, I would have been surprised. But these key things, I think if you're not using sidechaining with compression, and you're doing things in like popular styles, then I think that you're missing out on really making the low frequency be in complete control. You're missing out on getting a lot of clarity in frequency ranges. And then creatively, with some of the instruments, you're missing out on some really advanced creative tools, which could be interesting if you're doing it there. So I think between the few instruments that allow this and the dynamic plugins which allow it, there's a lot there that can really be used to help out with what you're doing. I will say you can sculpt your sound. So for instance, the last thing I'll talk about then would be with the compressor, because here, let's just load it up like this. With the sidechain, there's a whole menu here, or a whole set of options, where you can determine what the detection is, if it's the max or with the RMS, that's the root mean square, it's an average, or peak, the max or the sum. And then we have a filter, so we can actually filter this. So say you have like just a drum loop that you're using, and it's just a fully already mixed drum loop that you have access to, and you don't have access to the kick all by itself. Well, you can come in and you can do a low pass filter and lower the frequency down so that all that this is hearing is the kick of that drum loop. And so then you can actually still sidechain something off of the kick sound because it is being filtered just so you hear that low frequency part. You can also do like a band pass and make this around where the snare drum is, and you could do a really narrow cue, and then that would filter out the snare drum sound instead of the entire kit or cymbals and the kick. So you can actually have some flexibility in this particular effect plugin. I will say third-party things also tend to work pretty well with this. Let me come down and load up like a wave something or other. C1. See if it even works. Yeah, okay. So the waves things, the third-party things do have the sidechain option enabled. So it's not just a Logic thing, it's with third-party effects and sometimes instruments as well. Anything that needs an input. I was noticing with the Reason Plus rack, just double check them in the right place, that with this, there is the sidechain option as well. And so you can actually come through when you're looking at the input-output, there's a sidechain option and it shows up here as well. So you can sidechain into the Reason rack just the same as you would with any of the other instruments. Okay, I'm trying to think if there was anything else. I do want to really quickly just look at the Moog Model 15, see if there was a sidechain into there. And there's not. Okay, so you can't get your sound into this synthesizer, which is kind of a bummer because I think it'd be cool to be able to route vocals through the Model 15. There's probably other ways to do this. It's just not through the sidechain option. And I don't know. Let's look at the effects real quick just because it does show up as as an insert here. So you can actually load things through it that way. It's just not through the sidechain method. So sometimes instruments show up as an option to be able to be loaded either as an instrument or as an effect, and you have to figure out which one is the right one for any given situation. Loading the Moog, for instance, as an insert would mean we could use the filters and things from that synthesizer, which are modeled after some of the most famous filters ever, and use those in your project. So that would be a nice thing to know about if you have that instrument. Okay, kind of a shorter, smaller live stream today. Any questions or comments from anybody watching? There's a few of you out there. There's kind of a nice delay on this, so I'll give you a second. Yeah, we're going to be doing more of these live streams. I just want to get in the habit of doing a couple of them every week. And then I post up the videos afterwards. So anyone who's interested in seeing what they missed or hearing about the topic, we're going to try to keep them focused on topics. That way it's could be interesting for people who want to learn about those, but not necessarily make them like the traditional video where I just record and edit all of the pauses and things out. It's a little bit more flexible on my part just to have a video that I make and it's published when it's done, and so I don't have to necessarily worry about it. Okay. Well, I'm going to give it like 10 seconds because I know it hasn't quite caught up yet. Or maybe it did. Oh, it did. Okay, cool. If anyone has any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to pull the plug on this in about 2 minutes. So we will do another one probably on Thursday around the same time. Thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you later.